Malik Johnson stood at the front of the lecture hall, his heart pounding in his chest. The room was filled with his classmates, all seated and expectant, their eyes fixed on him. He could feel the weight of their gazes, a mixture of curiosity and skepticism hanging in the air like a thick fog. Today was the day he would present his research proposal on sustainable energy solutions, a project he had poured countless hours into, fueled by ambition and hope. "Good morning, everyone," Malik began, his voice steady despite the nervous flutter in his stomach. "Today, I'm excited to share my proposal on harnessing renewable energy sources more efficiently. This research could pave the way for innovative solutions in our fight against climate change." As Malik spoke, he noticed Jessica, Ethan, and Daniel exchanging glances in the back row. Their expressions were inscrutable, but he could sense the undercurrent of doubt swirling around them. Malik took a deep breath, focusing on the task at hand. He detailed his methodology, the potential impact of his findings, and how his approach differed from existing theories. The initial excitement in the room began to build, but he could still feel the tension radiating from his former friends. "And by integrating community feedback into our energy models, we can create systems that are not only efficient but also equitable," he concluded, a hopeful smile spreading across his face. The applause that followed was warm, but Malik couldn't shake the feeling that it was more for the idea than for him personally. Later that day, while walking down the corridor, Malik overheard Jessica's voice rising above the chatter of students. He paused, instinctively leaning closer to catch her words. "Seriously, do you think Malik can pull this off? His research is way too ambitious for someone like him," she scoffed, her tone dripping with disdain. Malik's stomach twisted in knots. "Someone like him," he muttered under his breath, the hurt slicing through his initial confidence. He knew the implications of her words. It wasn't just about his research. It was about who he was and the stereotypes that surrounded him. Frustration surged within him, pushing him to confront them. He approached Jessica, Ethan, and Daniel, who stood together, their laughter suddenly silenced by his presence. "Hey, I heard what you said, Jessica," Malik said, trying to keep his voice steady. "It's not just ambitious, it's necessary. We need to think big if we want to make a change." "Calm down, Malik," Daniel replied dismissively, crossing his arms. "It's just a little constructive criticism. You can't expect everyone to think your ideas are gold, right?" "Constructive?" It sounded more like a jab to me. Malik shot back, his frustration boiling over. "If you think I can't do this, then why don't you just say it to my face instead of hiding behind your laughter?" Ethan shrugged, his expression indifferent. "Look, we're just being realistic. Not everyone can excel in this field, and you might want to reconsider if you're aiming too high." Malik felt a lump form in his throat. He had hoped for support, perhaps even camaraderie, but instead, he was met with scorn. Turning away from them, he felt as if the ground had shifted beneath his feet. The laughter of the trio echoed in his mind, a reminder of his isolation. That night, alone in his dorm room, Malik sank onto his bed, his thoughts racing. The walls felt like they were closing in on him, the weight of self-doubt suffocating. "Maybe they're right," he whispered to himself, staring at the ceiling. "Maybe I should just give up." Just then, his phone buzzed with a message. It was from Professor Harris, his mentor. "Don't forget our meeting tomorrow. I want to hear about your progress. Remember, you have something valuable to contribute." Malik took a deep breath, the words of his mentor igniting a flicker of hope within him. He thought of the countless hours he had spent researching, the late nights fueled by caffeine and determination. He could not allow Jessica and her friends to dictate his worth. "I can't give up now," he murmured, determination growing stronger. With renewed resolve, he opened his laptop and began typing, pouring his heart and soul into his thesis. He knew that his journey was just beginning, and he was determined to prove that he belonged, not just at the university, but in the world of environmental science. Malik Johnson sat hunched over his desk, surrounded by stacks of research papers and a tangle of notes, his mind racing with ideas. The late afternoon light filtered through his dorm window, casting a warm glow on the pages before him. He was in the zone, fueled by a newfound determination to prove his worth. Each equation and diagram that he drafted seemed to pulse with the potential to change the world. As he scribbled down a new concept for harnessing solar energy more efficiently, his phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from Professor Harris, checking in on Malik's progress. Malik felt a surge of gratitude for his mentor's unwavering support. He quickly typed back, "Making progress. Just had a breakthrough with my solar panel design. Can't wait to share it with you." The reply came almost instantly. "That's fantastic. Remember, innovation often comes from persistence. Keep going." Malik smiled, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. He turned back to his notes, determined to push through the doubts that had clouded his mind just days before. Meanwhile, across campus, Jessica, Ethan, and Daniel gathered in a study room, their voices hushed but animated. They had recently come across Malik's research proposal and couldn't shake the feeling that they could replicate his ideas. "I mean, how hard could it be?" Jessica said, smirking as she flipped through Malik's proposal. "We could take his work, tweak it a bit, and present it as our own. No one will know the difference." Ethan leaned back in his chair, his brow furrowed. "Isn't that a little unethical? He'll notice if we start using his concepts." Daniel shrugged, indifferent. "It's a competition. If we can present something that gets us noticed, who cares where it came from? This is about making a name for ourselves." Jessica nodded, her eyes glinting with ambition. "Exactly. It's not our fault if he's too naive to protect his ideas. Let's strike while the iron is hot." Back in his dorm, Malik reveled in his discoveries. He had crafted a prototype model that could potentially double the efficiency of existing solar technology. The thought of presenting his findings at the upcoming conference filled him with excitement. He envisioned the audience's reactions, the way their faces would light up with interest and curiosity. But just as he was about to sketch out the next phase of his project, a sinking feeling crept in. What if Jessica, Ethan, and Daniel were right? What if his ideas were too ambitious? He shook his head furiously, pushing those thoughts aside. He had to believe in himself, and more importantly, in the originality of his work. Days passed, and the conference arrived. Malik walked into the auditorium, his heart pounding with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. He spotted the trio at the front, their smiles wide and confident. As he took his seat, he heard snippets of conversation around him, people buzzing about the innovative project Jessica and her group were presenting. "Have you seen their project? It's incredible," one student whispered to another. Malik's stomach twisted in knots. He felt the familiar pang of frustration, but forced himself to breathe deeply. He was here to showcase his own work, and that was what mattered. When Jessica, Ethan, and Daniel took the stage, Malik's heart sank further. Their presentation mirrored his ideas shockingly closely, and the applause that followed their talk felt like a slap in the face. They were receiving praise for concepts he had developed, and he felt invisible in that moment. "Can you believe their success?" Ethan exclaimed to Jessica after their presentation. "We should definitely keep this momentum going." Malik clenched his fists under the table, his mind racing. He couldn't just let this go. He needed to confront them. Summoning every ounce of courage, he stood up and made his way to the front of the room. The murmurs of the audience faded as all eyes fell on him. "Excuse me, but I need to speak," Malik said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I can't sit here and let this happen. The concepts you presented are mine, my research, my ideas. You didn't just take inspiration, you took my work." The room fell silent, the atmosphere thick with tension. Jessica's confident demeanor faltered momentarily, replaced with a look of surprise. "Malik, don't," he interrupted, his voice rising. "You didn't even acknowledge me. I deserve recognition for my work, not to be sidelined like this." As he stepped back, Malik felt a mixture of defeat and determination wash over him. He had spoken his truth, but the feeling of being overlooked gnawed at him. As he turned to leave, he heard whispers of disbelief and murmurs of support from the audience. It was a small comfort, but it ignited a fire within him. He had to keep fighting, not just for himself, but for anyone who had ever been underestimated. With renewed resolve, Malik walked out of the auditorium, ready to reclaim his narrative. As Malik Johnson sat at his cluttered desk, the glow of his laptop illuminated the late-night darkness that surrounded him. Stacks of books and scattered notes formed a chaotic fortress around him, each representing countless hours of research and dedication. The deadline for submitting his thesis to the prestigious environmental journal loomed like a dark cloud, and Malik felt the weight of it pressing down on his chest. He had decided to pour every ounce of his energy into creating a groundbreaking piece that could change the landscape of sustainable energy solutions, despite the skepticism of his peers. Just a few more edits, he muttered to himself, fingers racing across the keyboard. But as he reviewed his work, self-doubt crept in, whispering insidious thoughts. Asterisk, what if this isn't good enough? What if they think I'm just trying to ride on the coattails of others? Asterisk, he shook his head, trying to dispel the negativity. Just then, his phone buzzed, breaking the silence. It was a message from Professor Harris. Asterisk, don't forget to take breaks, Malik. You're doing great work. Trust your vision. Asterisk, a small smile crept onto his face. Professor Harris had been his pillar of support through this tumultuous journey. Malik replied quickly, asterisk, thanks, Professor. I'll keep pushing through. Asterisk, with renewed resolve. He refocused on his thesis, determined to silence the doubts that plagued him. Days passed in a blur of caffeine and determination. Malik spent hours in the lab, running experiments and gathering data, often sacrificing sleep. Each failure and setback felt like a personal affront, but he pushed through, driven by the belief that he had something important to contribute. The equipment failures were particularly disheartening. One day, the solar panel he had meticulously constructed malfunctioned during a critical test. "Come on," he exclaimed, frustration boiling over as he kicked the side of the equipment gently. "Why is this happening now?" But instead of succumbing to despair, he took a deep breath and reached for his phone. He dialed Professor Harris, who answered almost immediately. "Malik, what's going on?" "You sound stressed." His mentor's voice was calm and steady. "I just had a setback with my solar panel. It's not working, and I'm running out of time," Malik confessed, his voice tinged with desperation. "Listen, setbacks are part of the process. They don't define your work or your abilities. Remember, innovation often springs from failure. Take a step back, assess the problem, and then tackle it again," Professor Harris advised. Malik took a moment to digest the words. "You're right. I need to focus on solutions, not the problems." "Exactly. You've got this, Malik. I believe in you," Professor Harris said before hanging up. Reinvigorated, Malik returned to the lab with a fresh perspective. He meticulously examined the solar panel, isolating the issue and correcting the wiring that had caused the malfunction. With persistence, he finally achieved the results he needed. It felt like a small victory, but it was enough to bolster his confidence. As the submission deadline approached, Malik found himself at the university's annual research celebration, an event that would showcase the projects of his peers, including Jessica, Ethan, and Daniel. He dressed sharply in a tailored blazer, determined to show that he belonged among them, even if he felt like an outsider. The atmosphere was electric with excitement, laughter, and camaraderie. As Malik entered the venue, he spotted Jessica, Ethan, and Daniel gathered in a corner, their laughter ringing out like a taunt. He could feel the sting of their arrogance, particularly as they discussed their latest project, which mirrored his own research closely. His heart raced as he overheard Jessica boast, "I can't believe how well our project is being received. It's going to be a game changer." Ethan chimed in, "We should thank Malik for his inspiration. Without his ideas, we wouldn't be here." Their sarcasm was palpable, and Malik felt a mix of anger and hurt swell within him. He took a deep breath and steeled himself. This was his moment to shine, he thought, but the celebration felt overshadowed by their presence. As he mingled with other attendees, exchanging pleasantries and discussing his work, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was still fighting for recognition. "Malik, over here!" A familiar voice called. It was Professor Harris, waving him over. As he approached, he felt a sense of relief. "How's the thesis coming along?" the professor asked, genuine interest lighting up his eyes. "It's almost done. I just submitted it," Malik replied, pride swelling in his chest despite the tension from earlier. "That's fantastic. I can't wait to read it. Remember, it's your voice that matters," Professor Harris encouraged, placing a reassuring hand on Malik's shoulder. Malik smiled, feeling a flicker of hope. Yet, as he looked back at Jessica, Ethan, and Daniel, he knew the journey ahead was still fraught with obstacles. But for now, amidst the laughter and celebration, he held on to the belief that he could emerge victorious, not just for himself, but for everyone who had ever felt underestimated. Malik stood backstage, his heart pounding in rhythm with the distant buzz of the conference audience. The weight of expectation pressed down on his shoulders, yet a flicker of determination ignited within him. This was his moment, the culmination of countless nights spent poring over research papers and data sets, driven by a vision that felt more real than anything he had ever pursued. As he stepped out into the spotlight, the murmurs of the crowd transformed into silence, all eyes fixed on him. "Thank you all for being here today," Malik began, his voice steady despite the fluttering in his stomach. "I'm excited to share my research on sustainable energy solutions that could redefine our approach to environmental challenges." He glanced at the audience, a mix of scholars, students, and industry professionals, many of whom had heard rumors of his groundbreaking work. As he delved into his findings, the initial skepticism he had faced began to dissipate, replaced by a palpable interest. He showcased his innovative methods, illustrating how they could harness renewable energy more effectively than existing technologies. The visuals he had meticulously crafted danced behind him, each slide a testament to his hard work and dedication. However, as Malik concluded his presentation, a familiar trio emerged from the crowd: Jessica, Ethan, and Daniel. Their expressions were a mix of disdain and mockery as they took their seats, whispering among themselves. Malik's heart sank momentarily, but he steeled himself. It was time to confront the shadows that had loomed over him for too long. During the Q&A session, Jessica raised her hand, her expression smug. "Malik, while your research is interesting, don't you think it's a bit unrealistic? Your methods seem overly ambitious, especially for someone without substantial backing." The audience murmured, some nodding in agreement while others shifted uncomfortably. Malik inhaled deeply, refusing to let her words rattle him. "I appreciate your concern, Jessica," he replied, his voice calm but firm. "However, the potential for innovation lies in challenging the status quo. If we always play it safe, we risk stagnation." Ethan chimed in, attempting to bolster Jessica's point. "But how can you be sure your ideas are feasible? I mean, your project has received a lot of attention, but what if it doesn't hold up under scrutiny?" Malik felt the heat of the spotlight intensify as he faced the trio. "Every groundbreaking idea is met with skepticism, Ethan. What matters is the data and the science behind it. My research has been peer-reviewed, and I stand by its validity." His confidence resonated through the room, and he could sense a shift in the audience's energy. Daniel, sensing the tide turning, decided to take a different approach. "Isn't it true that your research was inspired by existing projects? How do we know you haven't borrowed ideas from others?" His tone was accusatory, and a ripple of tension swept through the audience. Malik's heart raced, but he met Daniel's gaze unflinchingly. "All research builds on previous knowledge, Daniel. That's the nature of academic progress. However, I have made significant contributions that not only expand upon existing theories, but also propose a unique methodology." The audience began to murmur again, this time in support of Malik. He could see some nodding, eyes glinting with newfound respect. The atmosphere shifted as Malik continued to explain his research, his passion infectious. The crowd began to rally behind him, their support becoming a tangible force in the room. With each question, Malik dismantled their criticisms, his voice growing stronger. "My goal is not just to showcase my findings, but to inspire dialogue about sustainable practices that can benefit everyone. We need to work together to address these pressing environmental issues, rather than pulling each other down." As he wrapped up the session, the applause that followed was thunderous. Malik's heart swelled with pride and relief, a feeling he had longed for since he first presented his proposal. He had stood his ground against the very peers who had doubted him, and in doing so, he had transformed the narrative. Stepping off the stage, Malik was met by a wave of congratulations. Fellow students and faculty members approached him, offering words of praise and encouragement. Yet, amidst the celebration, he spotted Jessica, Ethan, and Daniel huddled together in a corner, their faces a mixture of disbelief and anger. Malik felt a surge of vindication, but he also recognized the need for compassion. They had all been shaped by the same system, marred by the same prejudices. As he walked away, he resolved that this was just the beginning. He had not only proven his worth, but he also hoped to pave the way for others who faced similar struggles. His journey was far from over. This moment was merely a stepping stone toward greater challenges and opportunities. The air buzzed with excitement and anxiety as Malik Johnson prepared for the presentation that could change everything. He stood backstage, peering through the curtain at the sea of faces in the audience, a mix of students, professors, and industry leaders. His heart raced, and he could feel the weight of expectations pressing down on him. He had worked tirelessly on his thesis, sustainable energy solutions that were innovative and, more importantly, inclusive. Malik took a deep breath, reminding himself of the journey that had led him here. "You're going to do great," whispered Professor Harris, who stood next to him, his presence a reassuring anchor. "Remember, this is your moment. Speak from the heart." Malik nodded, the warmth of his mentor's words calming the storm of nerves inside him. He stepped onto the stage, the spotlight illuminating his face. As he began to speak, his voice steadied, and he felt the energy of the audience shift. He presented his findings with passion, detailing how his research could revolutionize the way energy was harnessed and used, particularly in marginalized communities. As he concluded, the audience erupted in applause. Malik's heart soared. This was the validation he had longed for. In the days that followed, his presentation went viral, shared across social media platforms, sparking discussions about racism in academia and the dire need for diversity in research. He received messages from students and activists around the globe, thanking him for his work and sharing their own experiences with discrimination. However, not everyone was thrilled by Malik's success. Jessica, Ethan, and Daniel watched from the sidelines, their expressions a mix of envy and frustration. Their project, a pale imitation of Malik's ideas, was quickly losing traction in the wake of his recognition. "How are we going to recover from this?" Jessica hissed, her eyes narrowing as she scrolled through the numerous posts praising Malik. "He's overshadowing us completely." Ethan crossed his arms, deep in thought. "We need to discredit him. If we can plant doubt about his research, maybe we can turn the tide back in our favor." Daniel nodded, a sly grin creeping across his face. "I can spread some rumors about his data. If we suggest it's flawed, people might start to question him." The trio huddled together, whispering their plan, each word dripping with malice. They were determined to protect their fragile egos at any cost, even if it meant resorting to underhanded tactics. Meanwhile, Malik was busy celebrating his newfound acclaim. He had received invitations to speak at various conferences and was even approached by a prominent environmental organization interested in collaborating with him. Yet, amidst the excitement, he began hearing whispers of discontent from his peers. One afternoon, as Malik sat in the library, he overheard a conversation between two students discussing the rumors being spread about him. "Did you hear? They say his research isn't even original," one student remarked, glancing around to ensure no one was listening. "They think he's just riding the wave of attention." Malik's heart sank. He had anticipated that not everyone would be supportive, but the realization that Jessica, Ethan, and Daniel were behind the rumors stung deeply. He felt a familiar surge of anger and sadness, but this time, he refused to let it consume him. Instead, he straightened his posture, a resolve forming within him. That evening, Malik gathered his thoughts and decided to confront them one last time. He approached Jessica, Ethan, and Daniel in the campus cafe, where they sat in a corner, laughter ringing out among their little group. "Can we talk?" Malik asked, his voice steady but firm. Jessica shot him a look of disdain, but Ethan waved her off, intrigued. "What's on your mind, Malik?" "You know what's going on," Malik replied, crossing his arms. "Spreading rumors about my research? That's not how you handle competition. If you have concerns about my work, why not discuss them openly instead of hiding behind gossip?" Daniel smirked, leaning back in his chair. "Oh, come on. You have to admit, you're just a flash in the pan. We're the ones who are going to make a real impact." Malik's eyes narrowed. "By stealing ideas? You think that's going to lead to something meaningful? All you're doing is highlighting your own insecurities." Jessica rolled her eyes, but Malik could see a flicker of uncertainty in her gaze. He took a deep breath, choosing his next words carefully. "I'm not here to fight you. I want to create change, to make a difference. Why not do it together instead of tearing each other down?" For a brief moment, silence enveloped the table. Malik could feel the tension hanging in the air, but he knew he had planted a seed of doubt in their minds. He straightened up and turned to leave, a sense of clarity washing over him. As he walked away, he felt lighter. He had confronted his adversaries, but more importantly, he had chosen to rise above their negativity. Malik knew that his work was bigger than any petty feud. It was a beacon of hope for those who felt marginalized, and he wouldn't let anyone dim that light. Malik stood backstage, his heart pounding with anticipation as he waited for his name to be called. The ambient chatter of the crowd faded into an indistinct buzz, and he focused on the moment that was about to change his life. Dressed in a sharp navy blazer, he felt the weight of his journey resting on his shoulders. This was the culmination of countless sleepless nights and a relentless pursuit of recognition in a field that had often overlooked him. As the host announced the winner of the Young Innovator Award, Malik felt a rush of adrenaline surge through him. And the award goes to Malik Johnson. The applause erupted like a thunderclap, and for a moment, he was enveloped in a wave of warmth and support. Making his way to the stage, he absorbed the cheers, the smiles, and the proud faces of those who had stood by him. Professor Harris, his friends, and even some strangers who had followed his journey. "Thank you. Thank you so much," Malik began, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "This award is not just a recognition of my work, but a testament to the power of perseverance. I dedicate this victory to everyone who believed in me, who challenged me, and who fought alongside me. Together, we can change the narrative in environmental science." The crowd erupted again, and he felt a rush of energy that he had never experienced before. But just as he was about to step down, a figure emerged from the audience, a well-known environmentalist, Dr. Evelyn Torres. With an aura of authority, she approached the podium, her expression grave. "Excuse me, Malik," she said, her voice cutting through the applause. "Before you leave the stage, I must address something crucial that has come to light." Malik's stomach dropped. He exchanged glances with his mentor, who looked equally concerned. The audience quieted, shifting their focus to her. "We have discovered that the project presented by Jessica, Ethan, and Daniel was built upon ideas and research that closely mirror Malik's original work. In fact, it appears they plagiarized significant portions of his thesis." Gasps rippled through the audience, and Malik felt a mix of shock and vindication. He glanced over at the trio, who had gone pale, their faces betraying a mix of disbelief and dread. Jessica's eyes darted around, searching for an escape from the harsh spotlight now shining on them. Dr. Torres continued, "This is not just a matter of academic integrity. It's about the ethical responsibilities we hold as researchers. Malik's work has sparked important conversations about inclusivity in science, and it is unacceptable that others would profit from his brilliance without giving him the credit he deserves." The crowd erupted into murmurs, some voices rising in outrage. Malik couldn't help but feel a surge of triumph as he watched Jessica, Ethan, and Daniel squirm under the scrutiny of their peers. They had sought to undermine him, but now the tables had turned. "Malik," Dr. Torres said, turning back to him, "your dedication to your research and your resilience in the face of adversity are commendable. I believe your findings will pave the way for innovative solutions in sustainable energy. We need more voices like yours in this field." Malik took a deep breath, trying to process the whirlwind of emotions. "Thank you, Dr. Torres," he replied, his voice steady. "I appreciate your support. This isn't just about me. It's about creating a space for everyone to contribute and be recognized for their work, regardless of their background." As he exited the stage, the applause surged once more, echoing in his ears. He felt a sense of closure wash over him, a moment where the struggles he faced seemed to dissolve into the background. He had proven his worth, not just to himself, but to an academic community that had doubted him. In the aftermath, Malik decided to channel his newfound influence into mentorship. He began hosting workshops for younger students, especially those from marginalized backgrounds, encouraging them to pursue their passions fearlessly. "This is just the beginning," he would say, his eyes shining with determination. "We all deserve a chance to shine, and I want to help you find your light." As Malik looked out at the bright faces of his mates, he realized that he had not only reclaimed his narrative, but had also become a beacon of hope for others. The shadows of discrimination would not define them. Together, they would forge a new path in the world of environmental science.